Hey Paige, it's Adam. So this week is going to be double the length, double the discussion, and double the poetry readings because I was absent last week and didn't get a chance to fully put out the material I wanted to. I'd like to start this week by telling you that we're going to have kind of a theme here with these readings. Some of these poems, well, one of them, is often underread and taken just for its literal meaning when you dig deeper into its meaning and the history behind the author, a whole second story comes out and makes its way to the front. The second one is usually read into very deeply, but by most accounts shouldn't be, and I'll explain that when we get to it. The first poem I'd like to read for you is My Papa's Waltz by Theodore Rothke. The whiskey on your breath could make a small boy dizzy, but I hung on like death, such waltzing was not easy. We romped until the pans slid from the kitchen shelf. My mother's countenance could not unfrown itself. The hand that held my wrist was battered on one knuckle. At every step you miss, my right ear scraped a buckle. Your heart beat time, excuse me. You beat time on my head with a palm caked hard by dirt, then waltzed me off to bed, still clinging to your shirt. See, a lot of people, they read that poem and they assume it's just a drunk father dancing with his son. But when you look further into the life of Theodore Rothke, you find out that as he grew up in New Jersey, and his father and mother owned a greenhouse. They would sell plants and things out of, and his father was well known for his alcoholism problem. That and to Theodore's dying day, he claimed his father was abusive. And when you really start to read in to the poem's lines, you pull up things like the whiskey on your breath could make a small boy dizzy. That goes to show that his father was not just slightly drunk, he was so hammered that his breath was making the child drunk. We romped until the pans slid from the kitchen shelf. I don't know anybody else, but when I waltz, it's not something hard or fast or strong enough to make the pans fall from the kitchen shelf. This implies that there's a lot of physical activity going on here. The hand that held my wrist was battered on one knuckle. Every step you missed, my right ear scraped a buckle. This sounds to me, as someone who's grown up in an abusive household, exactly like the fights I used to have with my father. He would try and take the advantage by holding on to one of my arms and then try and beat me. Well, this shows a small boy who barely comes up to his father's waistline, and every time he doesn't get hit, he manages to scrape the belt buckle. It also can be interpreted to mean that his father would beat him with the belt buckle. You beat time on my head with a palm caked hard by dirt. See, a lot of people think that that just is the father sitting there thumping on the head, but when you start reading it with this motif, it becomes a lot more sinister. Then you waltz me off to bed, still clinging to your shirt. This shows that the child was beat so badly that he would pass out and have to be taken into bed. Overall, depending on how you read this, this can either be a really happy, nostalgic poem or a window into the dark pain that is child abuse. I asked a couple of my friends online which way they read it. Actually, surprisingly, it was slightly more in favor of the abusive side, but a lot of people didn't take it as father on child abuse, but more the father didn't know how to communicate with his child. I had a fellow nerd fighter, Sarah, look at it, and she told me that a lot of people, upon first read, do assume that it's just a nostalgic poem. But once you, like I said, sit there and take a look at it, the dark, sinister nature comes out. See, I'm lucky. In high school, I studied Rothke. He's actually one of my literary heroes. I've made several trips up to his grave. It's just a couple miles from my location. And I sat there and meditated on what this poem meant. And it's my belief that this poem actually is somewhere down the middle. See, a lot of people think it's child beating on his father, and a couple other people think it's just a happy memory. I think what it is it's a child trying to rationalize what's happened to him. I think this young child has gone through all these hardships and can't understand why a daddy wouldn't love his son, and therefore all he thinks is that's how adults do this. That's how you show your children love. A lot of people in abusive relationships, abusive households, that's how they function, is by rationalizing and explaining away. Anyway, that's the poem that I really wanted to get down deep into the nitty-gritty in, and maybe someday later we'll actually look more at Orosky, his history, his father, and how that affected his outlook on life. The next poem I want to read to you, I actually have had memorized for years. It's written by the poet laureate of the United States, Carl Sandburg, and he calls it Fog. The fog comes on little cat feet, and sits looking over harbor and city, on silent haunches, and then moves on. See, a lot of people, since Sandburg was at the end of his life when that poem was written, they wanted to view it as how he was handling death, as an inevitability, as something that was going to come upon him, sit with him for a while, and then he would be gone. I choose not to believe that. That isn't exactly Sandburg's cup of tea. He doesn't do heavy poems like that. I choose to think like the people who believe it's just a poem about the fog. You see, and that's the wonder of poetry. Some of it is deep and emotional and requires several readings to fully comprehend. And some of it is just a pretty poem about the fog. Anyway, these are two of my favorite poems. Like I said, I studied Rothke in high school, and I studied Sandburg in my early college years. These men are both literary heroes of mine. I love reading their works. And by getting to know the author and delving deeper into their mindset, a whole new meaning of the poems come out. See, a lot of people and students these days, they're handed a poem in class, and they're told to read it and come up with some meaning to it. And oftentimes, without knowing anything about the time that the poem was written in, who wrote it, where they were at, without knowing any of that valuable information, you have a completely different lens on those words. And that can be good, but at the same time, you can miss entire portions of what a poem means because you don't have the same lens. See, I'm reminded often of the example of Beowulf. It was written back in the early medieval eras, when qualities that Beowulf exemplified were highly, highly sought after. Strength, courage, bravery. But when you read it from a modern standpoint, Beowulf just seems like a savage beast, killing things for the sake of killing. Anyway, down in the doobly-doo, I'm going to link you links to both Sandburg and Rothke's Wikipedia pages, and I'm going to encourage you to look at modern American poetry this week. And I hope that if you find something that you enjoy reading, I hope you'll make a video about it and help spread the word about just how enlightening and awesome poetry can be. I don't care if it's modern American poems like these two, or ancient Norse poems like Beowulf. I believe that all poems and all works of art have a deeper hidden meaning to them, that once you sit there and search for it, can really enlighten your path. Anyway, this has been Awesome Squared. I hope to hear from you, student page, and I hope you have a nice week. See you on Monday.